I'm Robert with Knowmium, and welcome back to our hybrid live video series. This is video number 3, The Awareness Story. I'm going to share a story with you that happened to me that demonstrates the awareness we need as facilitators before a hybrid workshop and especially during a hybrid workshop. This will also use some of the talking points from the previous video on choosing hybrid. A few years ago, when face-to-face workshops were the norm, a client contacted me asking me for a half-day negotiation workshop. I loved the client and I love negotiation workshops, so of course I said, yes, let's do this. I made plans for the face-to-face workshop, and then a few days beforehand, my phone rang. The human resources manager that hired me said, let's go hybrid. I said, well, what do you mean, let's go hybrid? She said, some of the participants can't be in the office that day, so we need to make this a hybrid workshop so they can still attend. As an outside consultant, it's very easy for me to say, yes, let's do this, but my ultimate goal is skills-based progress. I wanted to know that the participants and the client would be happy with the results. So I said, let's talk about this. How is the hybrid format going to work? The human resources manager said, we can just set up a Zoom link. The people who can't be in the office that day, they can watch on Zoom. Now, this is something that a lot of facilitators are hearing when people are looking for hybrid. But going back to that definition in part 1 of the series, setting up a Zoom link does not treat participants equally, and it doesn't give them a similar chance to participate in activities if they're just going to be watching along. I said to the human resources manager, there's going to be an issue with the breakout groups. The face-to-face participants are going to be in pairs or in groups of 3 running negotiation simulations because they need practice to actually advance their skills. How are we going to allow the virtual participants to participate? And the human resources manager said they can just watch one of the groups. They don't need to do the activities. They can simply be observers. At this point, I knew I had to have a deeper conversation, keeping in mind my goal of skills-based progress and actual participation. I said 3 things to the human resources manager. I said, well, first of all, participation builds skills. We can watch videos or watch other people do negotiation activities all day long, but it simply doesn't make us a better negotiator. So we need to give them some similar, or if not the same, activities. Number 2, I said multitasking simply doesn't work, and that is likely going to be a real threat to this hybrid format if we simply set up a Zoom link. A lot of people virtually might observe. Maybe they participate a little bit, but there's a good chance they're going to be doing other work, other email, or simply making coffee in the kitchen. And I said, number 3, we also have to think about the face-to-face participants. If there is a group of people running a negotiation simulation and somebody's watching through a webcam, that can be very disruptive. Not only is the technology physically next to them, but just knowing they're being observed could make them uncomfortable. People need to be comfortable if they actually want to learn and fully engage. Now, at this point, I said, let me make a recommendation. If I run a hybrid workshop, I'm going to need an extra person with me to help facilitate some of these activities with the virtual participants, and that simply will cost more money. It's probably going to be equally valuable for time and money and resources if I just run 2 sessions. Let me run a half-day session with the face-to-face participants. Then in the second half of the day, or another day, I'll run a virtual-only workshop for people who couldn't be here in the office. This will also help eliminate the need for that co-facilitator or producer. Even though I'm spending double time running 2 workshops, I won't need that extra set of hands. If we move forward with hybrid, I want to be sure that the virtual participants will be fully engaged and they will spend time before the session reading the program materials, the activity briefings, and that they will have an expectation to be on audio, on video, and fully participating, not multitasking. At this point, The human resources manager said, let's do it. I agree with you. Let's go hybrid. And at this point, I said, yes, let's do it. I was happy to be running a hybrid workshop. I find it challenging, but I also find it very exciting. And I knew I could make it successful for the client. And ultimately, if the client's happy, then I'm happy. We did have a great hybrid workshop that day, but it wasn't without its challenges. The awareness that I needed during that session was taxing. Something happened in our first negotiation activity. We were going to do a negotiation simulation, a simple buyer and seller simulation to find out how people are negotiating using their natural styles. 3 problems occurred. First, some of the participants simply didn't read their materials or they didn't plan for this activity. It didn't matter if they were face-to-face or virtual. If they didn't read the briefing, they simply weren't ready to jump into that activity. I knew that this was going to be a problem because I would have to pause the workshop and allow people to read and get ready for this activity. But what happens to the participants that were ready? Do I have a backup plan for them? Do I have something they can do while the other people get ready? The second problem is that some face-to-face participants who knew this was going to be face-to-face originally didn't quite plan for the hybrid element. Some of them didn't bring their smart devices. They didn't have a laptop, or a tablet, or the phone they had simply wasn't set up to be interactive with other people virtually. And then there was the problem with multitasking or simply absent virtual participants. When we were asking some questions getting ready for this activity, there were virtual connections that simply weren't replying and I had no idea where they went. Now keep in mind, I planned to prevent all of these things. I had sent out the expectations, I'd sent out the briefings and the readings, and managers that were communicating with the different employees who weren't going to be there that day, let them know all of this information. But that's what happens in hybrid workshops. Things will go wrong, whether it's technology or just participant collaboration issues. So what happened that day? Well, I had 3 solutions. First, I could form new groups. For people who were ready to participate, whether they were face-to-face or virtual, I was able to mix up the groups and put different buyers with different sellers. The people who weren't ready to participate, I wasn't going to pause for them. I could give them something else to do. Solution number 2. Sometimes there were 2 buyers, but there weren't 2 sellers. So now some participants had prepared, but I couldn't put them in a new group unless I gave them more time to get ready to be in a different role, and the different roles had different information, and I didn't want them to have both sets of information. So in that case, the producer or I could join a group and become a participant ourselves for that activity. And the third solution was I could simply remove the ghost. Those virtual participants that weren't replying, I could put them in the waiting room or simply kick them out of the session entirely and then try to reconnect with them during the break or contact one of their managers to find out, are they going to be a full participant or are they going to do multitasking and just be an observer, which doesn't help anybody, including themselves. One note about multitasking. The research shows that only 2% of humans in the world can adequately multitask. That's not just for skills-based workshops. Doing 2 things at once leaves us with less focus on both of those things. It takes more time to complete them both, and we often make mistakes or we need to add more details later, going back and redoing some of our work. So removing ghosts is sometimes a great idea, letting them go focus on the other work that they think is more important. Like I said, at the end of the half day, we had a successful hybrid workshop. Yes, there were issues in planning. Yes, there were issues with participation and other tech issues we might have run into, but we were able to get around all of those obstacles. Some of that is because I had backup plans. Some of that is because I had a producer. And some of that is simply because I had experience and I knew that certain things would happen in a hybrid workshop, but I had options 2, 3, and 4 to look at. I hope you enjoyed this story about awareness, about the awareness we need before We run a hybrid workshop when we're in the planning and discussion phase, but especially the awareness that we need all the time during a live hybrid workshop to make sure that everybody is fully active and participating and things are running smoothly. See you in video number 4.